So we've come to a very beautiful palace complex in the village called Dig, and this temple complex, palace and temple complex, was built by one of the kings of Bharatpur, which is not far from Vrindavan. And actually this is part of Vrindavan itself. It's a place I think most ISKCON devotees don't know about. They don't come here because it's not one of the 7 temples of Vrindavan or Radhakund, etc. But it's part of the history of the lore of Vrindavan, because much of what we see in Vrindavan proper, the palaces, the temples, etc., they were built by Krishna-conscious kings in previous centuries. When you walk around Vrindavan, you see many beautiful palaces, many beautiful temples, but the sadhus didn't build them because the sadhus were renounced. So Krishna-conscious kings would build that. That's part of their service to Radha and Krishna. And they would also build temples and palaces for their families. So this is one such temple and palace complex. It's quite vast, actually. It'll take us a couple hours to walk around. Only an hour and 20 minutes drive from Vrindavan proper. So I brought devotees here just to get a feeling for the history of Vrindavan, which includes these Krishna-conscious kings, these Rajarishis. So we're walking around. The king actually had a famous deity carved of Hanuman out of pure jade. Big, big deity, 8-9 feet tall, carved out of pure jade of Hanuman. And the deity, Lakshman and Ram, are sitting on his shoulders. So I think that deity must be worth millions and millions and millions of dollars. It's like they have a security guard there, actually. But like this, you discover many wonderful things in the greater Vrindavan. Vrindavan's more than Loi Bazaar, or even just our beloved Radhakund and Shyamakund. It extends for many, many, many kilometers. And as one goes around Vrindavan, there's many wonderful things that you can discover. So just for an historical aspect, we brought our devotees here, and I told them that today they can just wander in the palace grounds and just, imagine what it was like 300 or 400 years ago. And but it's nice it's being maintained. The government is maintaining this, and people come here. They have festivals here, they have tours here, etc. And Indians, they can come in for 20 rupees, and foreigners it costs 300 rupees. But when we arrived, we said, we're not foreigners. We're sadhus and sadhvis. You please give us the Indian price. They did, in appreciation, because devotees are all dressed so nicely. So we're wandering around here, and you can see in the video Hanuman, and you can see the beautiful architecture and the large grounds. This is how the kings lived. It's very nice how they used space. Not everything was construction like we see in Kali Yuga. There's construction, but there's lots of space, something like we might hear about in Dwarka. When Krishna ruled Dwarka as Dwarkadish, as the king, Dwarka was constructed in such a way that the citizens could, wander through gardens and forests and flower gardens and just, get a little relief from the stress of material life. Of course, I don't think there was any stress in Dwarka, but I'm just making a point to use space in such a way that the mind is peaceful, so one can think of Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. So we were speaking earlier about this beautiful palace complex, very extensive, beautiful buildings for various purposes. And over here is a beautiful lake as well. And beyond that we see the old fort the old fort. It's massive fort. I don't know how anyone could penetrate that fort, but the kings, they had this duty. Kshatriya means one who protects. So in times of war, when a kingdom was attacked, very often the citizens, the king and his entourage, his family, they would go into the fort, and the citizens would also come and be protected there, and they would be, fighting from that fort. So this Dig fort's very, very famous, very, very famous, as is this particular complex. And one might think that, the people are living such a simple life, and, one family, the king, has all this opulence. But the kings were Kshatriyas. They were fighters. They went out and they, took on the opposition, and they had their pride. Actually, it's described that just like sometimes people beautify themselves with makeup and hairstyles, the king's pride was the scars that they would get in battle, fighting the opposition. So this is kind of their mood. So they lived in a grand style, but the real kings were Rajarishis. It means they were saintly persons sitting on the throne, and therefore their mood was that they were ruling the people in order to protect them from foreign invasions, and protect them from the illusion of the material world by promoting temple worship, deity worship. Many, as I was saying earlier, many of the temples in Vrindavan, they were built by kings, not sadhus. Sadhus didn't have money. Kings had money. Yes, the kings would tax the people, but the Rajarishis weren't greedy. They weren't putting it in their pocket or hiding in a Swiss bank account. They turned that money and utilized it in the service of the people. They would govern in such a way that there was proper agriculture, economy, etc., etc. So that people had food to eat, they had shelter, a place to live, they were educated, they were schooled. This was the duty of the king. So it's not that the people were envious of this opulence. They felt protected by the king, and therefore they would serve the king. So this is actually, you could say, perfect politics. One time Prabhupada said, referring to democracy, demon crazy, because the leaders take so much advantage of the people, and the people not knowing what is the real goal of life and how to achieve it, they elect Sudras to govern. But actually, kings had it in their DNA. They went from dynasty to dynasty, and they ruled as some spiritual leaders. But because, practical life is also there, they knew how to satisfy the material needs of the public and the spiritual needs as well. So when we come here, we don't think, the people were envious of the king. No, they were grateful to the king, and this is perfect society. If you have a Rajarishi, a Krishna conscious ruler, whether it's democracy or socialism or royalty, the leader has to be Krishna conscious. So we're appreciating how the king lived in this way and had his fort to protect his people. So opulence was there, but opulence was used in the correct way. So some thoughts on visiting this beautiful palace complex in Dig, which again is just a short drive from Vrindavan. Devotees should come here and experience the history of India. I'm always interested in the history of India and how different people serve Krishna in their various ways.
It's said, as a matter of fact, Srila Gurudev quoted this yesterday, 64 million holy places, billion holy places in Vrindavan. As he's mentioned, we know prominently the 7 Goswami temples, a few other places around the area, but in reality, all 64 crores of square miles of Vrindavan are holy places. The pastimes that take place we may or may not have uncovered yet, but they're connected to the places where Krishna had his pastimes. Therefore, they become worth visiting, worth knowing. Additionally, the example is a lesson to us how to live our life. The Kshatriya kings, they were not greedy, as Maharaj says. And I liked his description of their decorations. For the Brahmana, his decoration is his knowledge, his humility, his renunciation, and possibly a few choice Tulsi necklaces. For the Kshatriya, his beauty is his ability to protect, and as Maharaj says, the scars that he brings back from his conquering. For the Vaishya, their beauty is the acquisition of gold, jewelry, lands, cows. And for the Sudra, their beauty is the sweat of their brow. This is not seen as a demeaning thing. It is a natural order of society. So in this way, every aspect of society has some particular role to play. This large complex here, we can't imagine, one family, okay, an extended family, 12, 15, maybe 20 members living. No, there would be servants, there would be cooks, there would be pujaris, there would be all of these arrangements where everyone was able to take shelter here and be provided for, because this was the duty of the king. As Maharaj has said, Raja Rishi, saintly kings who knew their duty was to protect and provide Krishna-conscious environment for the citizens. This is the difference between that type of leadership and what we find throughout the world today. Every leader in the world is exploiting the masses for their own private wealth, for their own private acquisition, and not really caring for the public. Occasionally you find one rare leader that is doing something for the public. So this is the example that we find in Krishna consciousness. This is the example we find in Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada may not have been a great king like this with massed palaces like this, although he did have so many temples. He one time said, I was living in Vrindavan, a very small room, and now I have temples all over the world. But Srila Prabhupada has given us this shelter. Just as the Rajputs here gave shelter to the residents, Srila Prabhupada has given us shelter in this ISKCON society, in this Vedic culture, in the teachings of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. So for us to embrace them, for us to be able to guide our lives by them, we can also be very satisfied and happy and peaceful. And what is the central point of this area? The deity. Prabhupada said many times that the home becomes purified by the presence of the deity. We know from having visited Jaipur so many times that the king arranged his palace so that he could see Govindaji, that the family members would go to Govindaji. Prabhupada tells one story of one very wealthy man that had the deity installed in the home, and it was the duty of every one of the children first thing in the morning to come and offer obeisances to the deity to take darshan. If they did not, the priest would give them one bill. Sir, you did not come this morning, you must pay this fine. And Prabhupada was in Los Angeles when he told this story, and he said, therefore I think anyone that does not come to Mangal Arati, they must pay the fine of distributing one Krishna book every day. So all the devotees laughed very heartily. So this was the center. So this type of a mood, this is how these places established and lasted so long, because Krishna was the center.
Yes, in that regard, the kings would use a lot of their opulence that they got from taxes and from conquering other kingdoms. That's what kings did. And a lot of that opulence was used for worship of the deity, because these kings were Krishna conscious, and they knew that whatever wealth they had was given to them by the Lord to be used by the Lord. So it was understood that if the deity was properly taken care of, then the kingdom would be properly taken care of. And Prabhupada also was teaching us that if the managers of our temples take very nice care of the deities, then everything will become auspicious. So this was the situation in Vedic culture, that the kings, they would daily go to the temple, they would watch the arti, and they would participate in the worship in various ways, and feeling that Maraki Krishna Mare Ke, Mare Krishna Raki Ke. If Krishna wants to kill you, no one can save you. But if Krishna wants to save you, no one could kill you. This was one of the symptoms of the kings. They were very, very devoted to Krishna in this Braj area, and in Rajasthan as well, as we know. Very devoted to to the deities, and this was their actual glory. They were just serving Krishna according to their propensity, arranging deity worship so that all the citizens could come every day and become purified by that worship as well. So all glories to the Raj Rishis. I hope that in the future we'll see more Raj Rishis to help us spread Krishna consciousness around the world. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.